I want to be transparent with you guys. Success. First time painting with gouache and I didn't get what I want. But there's always a second time. Second time around, I got what I wanted. I'm gonna share with you guys my findings, colors, and how to apply gouache. Let's go! So we'll be using our vermilion, burnt sienna, Naples yellow, purple, burnt umber, yellow ochre, and white. Alright. As always, we begin with a sketch. And yes, it's freehand, but who cares? I just took a picture from Pinterest and used that as reference to draw this girl. The problem is, I was so used to drawing upright that this one kinda had a little bit of distortion to it. Then again, who cares, right? As long as it looks fine, then we're off to a good start. Then I started painting the outlines with a burnt sienna color. I'm not sure if this is the actual burnt sienna. Using burnt sienna here to outline, since it's close to every color, it's like a mid color to every color. Like if you want to darken it, we can just add some ultramarine blue or just some raw umber to the line, and it's going to be darker. And it already has that fiery flesh feeling to it, so we're safe. Don't really notice it, but it's there in photos and even in our vision. Somehow there's always this red thing around everything. So I started layering purple over certain lines and areas which are supposed to be black when we look at it, but it's not really black. So I just used the purple here just to create this dark value we're seeing. Now applying a thin layer of burnt sienna. I tried applying thickly in the first try, but that's a problem. You know, when you apply the color thickly, it's going to lift when you apply the second layer. So it's better to just layer a thin wash, but correctly. I find that it's much easier to blend the colors when they are not so thick, like a watercolor, but not as thin as watercolor, just enough flowing consistency, more like milk consistency. It's easier to add more paint than to subtract paint, especially when we are using paper here. And of course, with that regard, I was using a gessoed paper previously and that failed, coupled with a thick application of gouache. It failed terribly. Here I'm applying a thin coat of Naples yellow, but not as thin as milk, maybe a thick milk like cream, soft cream, not cheese but soft cream consistency, so that it's thicker but not too thick, so that it absorbs into the paper, and so that I can massage the paper to create that transition. I think you can do blending practice on a piece of your watercolor paper before doing your final piece. This way you can gauge and control your paint and not have to redo everything. Here I'm trying to blend out the reddish color I applied on the nose. By having just some water on the brush, I try to blend out the color I placed there. I kinda have a partial success, but I would rather have applied a thinner initial coat than have to blend it out like this. Still, this shows that you can somewhat fix a mistake, but I don't know how far we can push that. So for me, it's better to paint carefully and more thinly with multiple layers than to paint thickly. But I guess that depends on your style you're after. Reinforcing the shadow mid mid tone value with red here, so we just get a more warmer shadow transition. I'm thinking I want to try a more stronger contrast between light and shadow by using actual blues and not purples for the shadow areas, and more warmer yellows for the light. But while painting this, my real concern was not getting the picture muddy, because in the previous painting it quickly turned muddy when I mixed blues and browns into the flesh tone. And as far as I've seen on other YouTube channels, I don't see them actually painting in gouache using the traditional techniques or using traditional colors. So far, what I've been seeing is artists are using just earth tone, just plain colors from the cup. But I'm not really subscribed to a lot of gouache artists. So, yeah, I guess I haven't seen it all when it comes to gouache. Uh, it's easy to blame the paint quality, like it's cheap, so it gets muddy, but we don't really know that. Sometimes, when using cheap paints, unless they're just like 80% chalk, it can work. Because I painted with oils using my own mixture, and it has lots of chalk in it, and it didn't look dirty upon mixing. So I guess it depends. Applying the paint here more thinly is really much more convenient than just applying it thickly. But in here, I added white to the red, vermilion mixed with a little bit of burnt sienna and white, so I get a lighter color. I guess you could say the blending did okay. I mean, the more I tried to blend this area out, the nose area out, it kind of worked. So I guess that's alright. So in this section here, I'm using white mixed with purple and just very light purple, just to create that, that dead color, kind of white color, white skin, dead white skin. Caucasian skin kind of looks like that, like their skin is so white, and then there's just portions of red here and there. But I guess it depends on the tan and the temperature. That's very general. I understand, but you have to have, it's good to have a reference point, and that's where I come from, depending on the reference. And in this reference, there was like a pale skin below the reddish portions. But you'll be amazed how this color looks when placed side by side with red and orange. It just becomes like this cream white when it's really purple. Or maybe it's just gouache again, because they're saying that when gouache dries, lighter colored gouache, when it dries, it becomes lighter, and darker colored gouache becomes lighter. Or was that darker color becomes lighter, lighter becomes darker? I don't know. Okay, so I noticed that the color in the nose bridge is actually the Naples yellow, and it's not actually pink or red like I said before. So you can notice it here, and I'm mixing the red into it. It looks like I'm trying to rub the paper off, but actually I'm squeezing the paper by having water on the brush and placing it into the color to squeeze out the color so I can blend it out. So the principle is like a dried watercolor or gouache on your palette, and you put water on it so you can blend it out, something like that. Too much rubbing on the paper can actually damage it, so I would rather not have to do that often. So the right amount of pigment and water the first time is better than just adding more thicker gouache over it would be better than to squeeze them out like this. But I guess in this case that was unavoidable because I really wanted the softest transitions that I can make. But there are other brush work that don't require this, and they look really cool. Those painterly type work. This one would be like an anime type, but whatever, right? At this point, I'm adding a little bit of raw umber into the mix of the white, purplish white color. Just add that also to the Naples yellow, just a little bit to darken it, and use that to draw this dark midtones. I guess you could say I'm drawing with paint, and I guess that's a better analogy, the better way to think of painting when you're not used to painting, because you're just drawing lines with color to build up form, to create shapes, but the focus really is on creating shapes more than creating lines. I mean, when we're drawing, we're creating volume, we're imagining we're creating volume by encapsulating objects with lines, right? But in painting, we're creating form by using shapes with different values and color. Nobody really taught me that through YouTube, but that's really important, I guess. Again, when painting, it's better to think of shapes, value, color, rather than lines. But we use lines to build these shapes and apply color and value. It's like magic. Thinking this way also helps us break down our reference so we can see different parts of, for example, here the girl's face, how it turns, the colors on her skin, where the color stops, where it blends, where it, so having the idea of shapes rather than lines is very helpful for painting. Here the grayish color I'm applying over her face is not actually gray, but it's the purple color with raw umber, which makes it this kind of shadow color, like a desaturated purple, brownish desaturated purple, which is the color of shadow somewhat in a fluorescent light. I guess it's a neutral shadow color. I've been experimenting for a few months looking for this color. What's the color really? What's the color of shadow really? I've been looking at things, shadow inside the house, shadow on a paper, on a white paper, on a colored paper, and how shadow works. And so far, this is what I've discovered. So maybe you can use that somehow in your work. Thank me later, bro. Just kidding. Maybe it's gonna cause trouble in your work, so better just figure things out on your own. People don't like to be told. And I'm just saying this might work for you. Seriously though, or not too seriously, at this point, I'm just reinforcing certain areas. Reds, adding blues here and there, adding reds. It's just to add more color variation and more interest to the subject. I really like looking at those eyes, like watery eyes with, reddish areas, more reddish, like a post crying eyes. It looks kind of nice in paintings like this. I guess, especially on this subject, she kind of has this eyes, like sad eyes. So I thought I could enhance that and show that a little bit more, but not too obvious. I don't want to make her look like she's crying. Tired eyes, I guess. Much better way to say it than crying eyes, I mean. I guess this is what you would call the refinement stage, when you're doing just small things here and there, to bring out something, emphasize something, or correct something. What do I hope to gain painting in gouache? Nothing really. Painting in gouache is very easy. I mean, convenient. You don't need to prepare lots of things like oil painting or in acrylic. It's just water, and you can just leave your brush to dry, and it doesn't damage your brush. And you can paint anywhere, you can bring it anywhere. You just need a bottle of water, a dropper, your brush, and your palette. Of course, your paper, of course. Riding a train, I think you can bring just your bottled water and a dropper with water to wet your paint, and your portable palette and your sketch notebook. When I was a kid, we used to travel from the province to Manila on a ship, and I guess right now, if I do that again, I would bring gouache. I would not be bringing oil paints on the boat, on the ship. I mean, I really love to travel on ships. It feels kind of nice to me. It's like the ocean breeze, the way the ship just sways And knowing you're in like nowhere kind of feels really scary and calming at the same time. But the most beautiful thing about it for me is when you're not caring about anything, not caring about time, what you're doing, because you're traveling on this ship slowly to a destination, right? And work always begins when you arrive on a destination, when you're in that place to work, and when you're transitioning on this slow ass ship, it's really freeing. Kinda, it's like a mini vacation sort of thing. So I guess that's it. Most of the video here will be about painting the hair, and they're just, I'm not showing it in detail. It's just a run by. Most of it is just doing the same thing over and over again, with different intensity, I guess, different pressure, different amount of paint, but it's basically just the same thing. You're doing the same thing over and over again on different parts, areas. So basically, when you're doing hair, it's just the same. When you're doing clothes, it's the same. You're just using different value, different saturation, different color. But yeah, of course, there's shortcuts, a simpler way to paint hair or an easy way to paint accessories. Of course, there's that. I'd say remember to keep some areas of the shadow warm. For example, your cast shadows. Beside your cast shadow, just right before your cast shadow, it's usually warmer. If not, it kind of looks nice if you keep it warmer. So I guess that's one tip. So again, don't be scared to experiment. Add certain colors here and there. We don't have to be. I mean, there's this pressure for most artists to be really, to appear good, to appear the best. I mean, it's not necessary. I mean, of course, if that's what floats your boat, or that's what you need to show people to earn something or to be someone, I don't know. But again, if that's what you need in life, then go pursue it. We pass through these things. I've been there. It was pointless and exhausting, and it didn't bring me joy. For me right now, I honestly, it's just having fun with people that share the same interest rather than competing against them, to strive to be accepted and valued for your skill and talent. I mean, that's I'm not saying that's not a valid way to live, but for me, I think it's much better to find joy with people rather than to be praised. So that's it. A girl in gouache. I hope you like it. Maybe inspired you to do things to paint in gouache. To be honest, I was hesitating to paint in gouache, but no regrets here. So that's it for me, and I'll see you later.